old school for anybody who was craving it, I guess. That was a mistake on my part, but hey, it worked. So
It worked. It's fine.
that's
It's
all. We're here.
fine. Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Compton,
I'm Vanessa Junta.
and
Good
this
to
is
see everybody. I mean, I can't see you, but you know what I mean.
well, Anita's here, Tiffany's here. Hello to you both. Thank you for joining us.
Hey,
It's nice to
y'all.
have you. Uh, yeah, I mean, we're fresh off of multiverse, which we were just talking, just literally right seconds before we started here about, and I think we've all kind of, well, I don't know if anybody ever fully recovers, but
I at
actually,
least got sleep, and my poor feet are like, and my knees are like, thank you for sitting down, my friend.
yes, it was a very successful weekend, a very good time, cool new venue, lots of really great stuff. Just looking forward to the future of multiverse for sure. I think it's going to be something special and amazing, and I can't wait for you all to experience it. For those of you who have never been, got to get there, and for those of you who have been, you got to come back, and that's how it goes, right? So.
That part.
I love what you said. I believe you said it. Did you? I think you did say it at the closing ceremonies, which is all we're trying to do is get you here. Once we get you here, we
Hmm.
got you.
Yeah, we're like the Hotel California of conventions. Honestly, if you're our people, we just have to get you there once. If we get you there once, you're going to want to come back every year. Now, you may not be able to come back every year. We all have our stuff, but you'll want to, and that's the goal. We just got to get them in the door. That's it.
I
Hotel
love
California. That's how
it.
it works.
So we also joke, as we do frequently on this show, about the idea that whenever we decide to plan this show out, whenever we put it together,
Yes,
something breaks, some big news story
that
happens,
we
and
yes.
and at that week, in that moment, and it happened again. So we're going to
Again.
talk about our top story tonight, which is, of course, Amazon shutting down Kindle Vella.
Yes, I actually got the email and like I caught it as soon as it hit my email. I happened to be looking at email right then. And I just like sent Joe a message. I was like, guess what? Kindle Bella's closing. All right.
Yeah.
So, yes, exactly. We're winding down. All right. So, in 2021, Amazon launched Kindle Vella, which is a platform for serialized fiction, for those who don't know. And in February 2025, Amazon is closing Kindle Vella. Authors, like I said, received an email this week letting them know that after December 4th, the platform will no longer be allowing new work to be uploaded. And in February, most access to stories will end. Amazon is encouraging authors to publish their Vella works as ebooks and has put a couple things in place to make this easier. First, they've changed their terms of service to allow for immediate republication in ebook format. Previous terms of service required a 30-day wait. And on November 4th, they'll have a process in place where authors can download their stories directly from their Vella library, which they say should make republishing them easier. Comment Amazon said, this was a difficult decision. We are grateful for all of the authors and readers who participated in Kindle Vella. And while we remain committed to experimenting and testing new ideas to deliver unique and delightful experience for both readers and authors, Kindle Vella hasn't caught on as we'd hoped. So, duh, of course it didn't. So this is my commentary, y'all. Of course it didn't, because you didn't push it out to the readers ever,
Mhm.
like ever. Vella was always an afterthought for Amazon. They didn't actually, they weren't, it didn't feel like they were trying to make it successful because let's face it, for the first year, they didn't even make any public announcements about it at all, like nothing. Not even, just some random comment in there, what's new at Amazon kind of thing. There was nothing. Consistently, when I would talk to readers at my sales booth at different places that I've vended, because I was just starting to really get into vending in 2021, 2022. And I don't think I ever had a reader, with the exception of romance readers. I would occasionally get a romance reader who knew what Vella was, but most everybody, I'd be like, "Hey, have you heard of Kindle Vella?" Because I had these little, 1 by 1 inch cards that had all my information on it with a little QR code on the back, and they were like, "No, what's Kindle Vella?" So then I would have to go through an entire spiel explaining Amazon's product so that I could then pitch my product that is on Amazon's platform. So, and it wasn't even until, and they were subsidizing authors, which was great from the author's perspective, but really in the long run, yes, we want money, but we want readers, because readers is what brings us money long term, which we'll be talking about later. But I just, it's, I really don't understand what Amazon's entire, like, I have an idea of what their play was. I don't think Amazon ever intended Vella to be an actual viable product.
Mhm.
I think they were just trying to disrupt Wattpad and Royal Road and the other serialized fiction, especially Wattpad. Wattpad had some big numbers, right? They weren't
Yes.
monetizing at that time.
Yes.
So I think Amazon was just like, well, you know what? We'll jump in, pay authors, and we'll pull people from Wattpad,
Mhm.
without any real intention of, like, they didn't have any concept of how to make it viable long term.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know if anybody knows, but it should include letting readers know that you have this platform for them to read on.
Yeah.
So when they did finally announce it, and I was an early adopter of Vella, like I was on Vella pretty much as soon as it opened.
Yeah.
Uh, and but like, so we're waiting and waiting and waiting for them to make this big announcement, and waiting and waiting and waiting. And for like a year, they kind of put it on their front page for like
Mhm.
a week.
Mhm.
That was it. Like it was that was so gosh, I have no idea why it didn't succeed.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, you couldn't have buried it any deeper than they did. You have better luck. You'll have better luck finding Jimmy Hoffa than you will Vela on Amazon.
Mhm.
But a few things. Yes, I do believe what you said was right, that it was a response to Wattpad because of earlier we did the story when this came out, and earlier that month, Wattpad had announced that they were changing the direction of their serialized fiction to kind of go into a format where they're going to try and engage filmmakers to join to kind of make short films out of these serialized versions
Mhm.
and put
Which
video
is smart.
on their site. And that, I think, coupled with the fact that Jeff Bezos was getting divorced at the time and he needed some more revenue and he was looking for streams to figure out, what's out there that's hot. Wattpad was very hot at that moment because of that announcement. And so I think they had a design because they had a studio output that they were, really putting all of their chips in. Amazon Studios was a really big investment for them that they wanted to make viable. And then we realized that they're not making any money off of that it was sucking more money than it was giving them. So they kind of scaled back their production. And then, of course, Wattpad's thing didn't really go off the way they'd hoped. And so they looked at that and go, okay, well, now we can just ignore this thing and just see how it goes, right? And they were, I think with Amazon, often they have these ideas, they put them out there, and then they hope that word of mouth spreads like wildfire because they have what, 1 billion people that go on their site every single day, right? So
Mhm.
they're really hoping that that was the case. And I don't know for that week if anything happened or anything shifted, but yeah, they just never put their whole muscle behind it, and it's a shame. I do know people who were successful on Vela. It's just,
Mhm.
and they're pretty upset about it, but they also shifted the way that they pay people just recently
Mhm.
too on Vela, and that kind of, you lost the audience you had because, and the whole thing was convoluted with these coins and the system that they were
Yeah.
putting together, and it wasn't very well thought out in terms of those aspects. I think people just got confused and were like, "Yeah, we don't really want to."
Yeah, it was hard to explain. They couldn't just pay money and purchase a thing. They had to pay coins and then use the coins, and that's how the authors got paid. We didn't get paid by page read, we didn't get paid by episode, we got paid based on how much they paid for the coins that they spent on ours. Which
Mhm.
means if they picked them up in a sale where they had 30% off, we lost 30% of our revenue, which was of course shitty.
Right.
um but I do think though Amazon is a copycat at its core
Yep.
with very few exceptions. I
Yeah.
mean, even the ebook thing they copied from like Kobo
Yeah.
and Smashwords
Yeah.
and all of those who were, putting out ebooks well before Amazon was, right? Amazon is a copycat. They see a thing and then they copy it
Mhm.
and then they try to make it work, but they don't know the um, target market or the logistics and mechanics of it the way
Yeah.
the company that made it does. So if they can't buy that company, then they're just like kind of trying to pull it together, the way I try to pull together snacks or something before a party when I forgot that I need to bring snacks to the party. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, it's not and if they're not behind it full force, then they're not gonna it's not gonna do anything. If they can't buy the company that
Mhm.
does the thing, or they're not behind it full force, which they're not gonna be behind most of their stuff full force. They're just
Right.
like
Yeah.
throwing spaghetti at the
Yeah.
wall. But it's not even remotely surprising that this failed. But the interesting thing, I think, is that it spawned a lot of companies that now are doing serialized fiction,
Mhm.
like C. And like there are, in addition to the ones that were already around, there are now other ones that
Yep.
now are getting like we're already get because people were disillusioned with Vella because they weren't getting readers
Yeah.
because Amazon was not saying that this was even a thing, right?
Yeah.
So people started going to these other companies that where there are readers and the readers are very loyal to that platform, because they're finding good things on it. So then more good authors go there and then more readers go there. So what they inadvertently did was actually increase the market share of their competitors because they rolled this out so very badly.
Yeah. And they also, they're also notorious for exclusivity and trying to get you
Mhm.
to sign exclusive things, and so I am curious. I don't know if you know the answer to this question or not, but I'm curious when you take it from Vela to an ebook, are you beholden to then put it on unlimited for a certain period of time,
No,
or it can go
no.
wide and be wherever
Yeah,
it needs to be?
because those are two different
Of course.
copyright, they're,
Of course, they wouldn't talk to each
licensing
other.
rights.
What am I
Yeah.
thinking?
One is serialized fiction and one is first American ebook rights or first global ebook rights or whatever. So
Mhm.
technically, and that's why when Vela first started, you originally were not allowed to publish the serialized fiction in an ebook at
Yep,
all
yep.
while it was on the Vela thing. And that caused such an outcry
It
from
did.
authors because it is an entirely different set of licensing rights. So basically, Amazon wanted the serialized rights, but also the ebook rights, and didn't want you and weren't willing to use the ebook rights. Does that make sense? They
Yeah,
wanted control over the ebook rights, but let me tell you, that little clause did not last long at all.
no,
So that lasted like a month, maybe.
yeah,
And then they changed it to where um once it, like because it was like once you completed it on Vella, 30 days after it was complete, then you could release it as an ebook. But I think you had to do it on Amazon. I think you could not do it wide in that instance. But with Vella going away,
Yeah.
there's something interesting though, and I'm not sure exactly how this works because those customers who used their coins and unlocked, so the way Kindle Vella worked, for those who don't know, is that people got the first few free, and then you had to pay these coins that we mentioned to unlock subsequent episodes. But apparently, even when we remove them in February, when everything goes away, on the app, the iOS and the Android Kindle apps, readers still have access to the stories that they purchased, the pieces that they unlocked. So I'm not really sure how they're getting away with that because
Mm.
I reread the letter, I reread the email, and I thought, oh, maybe that was a typo. But then when I went and read something they had on the website, they made it very clear that that readers can still read those, the ones that they paid for, uh,
For how long? Do you know?
on iOS or Android.
Is there a time limit for that for them?
Not They did not mention that there was a time limit.
Maybe because they don't want to give people
So
back their money, but
yeah, yeah,
but I,
that's my guess. But then also,
yeah, I mean, how do the
that
rights
me
work at that point? I mean, there's got to be
right.
some kind of legality that's going to prevent them from preventing other people from seeing it in a different format. I mean, I have to imagine that can't fly. I mean, if they're
I don't know.
shutting down a program, you know, it's like a publisher closing, right? You get your rights reverted back to you.
Hmm.
That's part of U.S. copyright law. It's not even
Yeah,
that's not even
but
Amazon who can finagle that.
I I think that I would guess if we ask them, their thinking is just like if someone had bought the ebook before your publisher went out of business, it's not like they lose access to the ebook, right?
Mm,
But that's not how Kindle Vella works. Kindle Vella is hosted on Amazon servers. It is not an ebook that gets distributed, at least my understanding of it. Like you can't just like have it on your phone and your phone not be connected to the internet and listen to it on your phone.
I will
So,
say, however, on KU, if a publisher goes down and they take the file down, you can no longer borrow it. It will go away off of your KU.
right.
So,
Yes, right. And so I don't get the impression that people can go in and still read the stories, without paying for it. It's people
right.
who actually already paid to unlock the episodes will retain those episodes.
Mhm.
So,
It'll
yeah,
be interesting
I'm
to
not
see
really sure how that works.
it'll be interesting after February. We might be doing a story later on where there might be some
On a
lawsuits.
lawsuit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something that
yeah,
might be
yeah,
along those lines
yeah,
because yeah, that's. I mean, there's little trickery there that I think they think they're going to get away with, and I don't think they can. So
yeah. We'll see. I don't know.
and he
I don't
says
know. Yeah,
big
big
shot.
shock. So
if we
surprised.
if I didn't have
Yeah, and there were
yeah
yeah, and there were even people who had like Kindle Unlimited, who still didn't know about Bella. So it was so weird. Anita's like, kind of glad it never came to Canada now. And that
yeah
was the other issue. And I think we were talking about this on the Twitch stream this week, Anita, that that they never, in addition to never telling American readers, they never even opened it up to
yeah
the wider world. It
yeah
was only ever a US
yeah.
4 year
Four-year fucking experiment. How about that? It's like come on.
I mean, that's the biggest clue. That is the biggest clue that they really weren't serious about it.
Yeah
Because if they were serious about it, they absolutely would have opened it up to Canada at the least, right?
yeah
That you know. So, yeah.
yeah.
Anyway,
I
so,
mean, you look at what Spotify's doing, and they're spreading like wildfire across the world now because they're trying to get it out there. So yeah, the audiobook thing is now they've added countries, and so I think if that was the case, if they were really serious about it, after 4 years, you would have thought that at least it would have gone to Canada. I mean, it's not that hard to.
But they were never serious about it. I
Yeah,
mean, after 4 years, readers still don't even know what it is. As a matter
yeah.
of fact, when this made headlines in various small places, anybody who's a reader's like, "What the hell was that? I didn't know. What's Kindle Vella?" It's gone, so it don't matter what it was.
I
So
know a lot of people too, and a lot of people are patting themselves on the back right now. But I know a lot of people who were like, "I'm gonna wait and see. I'm gonna wait and see." And
mhm.
after 4 years, uh, yeah, they turned out to be right. But it took 4 years, so I mean,
Yeah,
uh,
but the good thing is, like, there are authors that made some bank while
yeah,
Amazon was paying,
some that
bonuses
some that
because
yeah,
they were making, like,
bankroll.
hundreds of dollars a month just posting,
Yep,
like,
yep,
not even people reading it, just posting. As long as you were posting regularly every week, you would get a certain amount of money.
yep.
Um, like, when I was posting my stuff, I posted a partial novel that I was working on that I ended up I stopped posting, and then, but I did later post the entirety of a middle grade. Well, it's really written as like for an adult audience, but the characters are 12 years old. And here's another thing, and this like really tipped me off that something was going on at Kindle Vella. Back early this summer,
Mhm.
somebody clued me in that my Kindle Vella title with the 12-year-old girls, that is urban fantasy, contemporary fantasy kind of thing, was marked as erotica.
Whoa.
And there's only one way that you can get a hold of KDP. Like, there's literally one point of contact. You have to click this link, and that is the only way to reach KDP. That link was throwing a 500 error, which is a server side error.
Mm,
So I couldn't reach KDP at all. So I reached out to a couple different places to see if anybody had an email address that I could send to, and I sent it to like email addresses that I'd used before because, number one, it was still showing on the back end that
mm,
all the settings were right. I had no way to remove that tag.
mm,
And so basically, Amazon was saying that it was CSA, right?
mm.
And it was not,
Mm.
and it's still not changed. It is still not changed. I never heard anything back from them ever.
Wow.
So,
All right. Well, what if you're wondering what to do next? We luckily have Seal Cannon, who is here to tell you that change is okay. It's okay to change, and she'll tell you why here, and then we'll be back to tackle probably one of the biggest things we're going to tackle in the history of this show. But we'll be right back, and here's Seal Cannon for you.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another monthly marketing tip. And today I want to talk to you about adapting to changing markets and changing platforms. Just a few days ago, Amazon announced that Kindle Vella, its serialized fiction platform, will be closing its doors. This has left many authors scrambling and kind of wondering where they're going to go from here. I experienced this myself when Kindle Worlds closed, right in the middle of an 8-book author collaboration. We were doing the Salvatore Legacy. Kindle Worlds was a platform where you could write about actual like TV shows and shared worlds with other authors. So I was really excited about that, and then it just closed down in the middle of our launch. Also, when Thunderclap and Head Talker imploded seemingly overnight because social media platforms changed their usage terms and the way that those apps could be used. So it pretty much just killed those. The thing about being an author or anyone selling any sort of product in this fast-paced world that we live in is that you kind of have to adapt with the times. And adaptation is a lot easier if you have a backup plan. No one can predict the future, but we can plan for it. So what's the first step? This is going to be kind of subjective, as not all people think the same way or do things in the same order. But here are my suggestions. First, let's outline what you're already doing and what is working well that you're doing right now. Next, let's write down your goals. Where are you now, and where do you want to be in 6 months, next year, 5 years from now? Write down those goals in as much detail as possible, no matter how crazy they might seem to you at this point in your life. Then let's connect the dots between what we're doing and what's working and what needs to be done to get us to the first goal on your list. Then from there, what will get us to the next goal, and so on and so forth. So far, we've just been planning for our future. But now comes the lesson that I want to teach you. Just like when you're plotting a book, in life, there will be conflict. In a book, when there's no conflict, it's kind of boring, right? Conflict is what makes the end goal worth it, even when it feels like the world is ending and nothing's ever going to be the same again. And these big changes, especially when they affect our livelihoods, can feel insurmountable. So that's where the planning comes in. It's going to give you kind of a roadmap to where you're going to go next. I want you to take each step towards your set goals and come up with at least 2 things that could go wrong on your way to achieving those goals. The things that are most likely to go wrong, not something like an alien invasion or a handsome Fey Lord comes and whisks you away to be his companion. I mean, those would be nice, but that's not the scenarios we're talking about. This is where the critical thinking comes in. Once you've listed a few ways that things could go wrong, let's do some research to see where that alternate version of yourself who has hit this roadblock would go, and how will they still be able to reach each goal. If your intended path was blocked, would you go into the mines of Moria? Would you walk around? Would you wait it out? No taking the eagles, because that's not an option, and I have very strong feelings about this. But 99% of the time, you're going to find alternative platforms, new methods of marketing. Heck, you might even discover a better way to reach readers and make more sales, or to keep more of your profit. Sometimes it won't be that hopeful, and it could set your timeline back, and that's okay. But the important thing is that you don't give up. Maybe the answer is opening your own web store, or joining a new platform, going back to an old platform, changing your release schedule, attending a different event than the one you had intended to attend in the first place, banding together with others who have been displaced to brainstorm or to build something better. In the immortal words of Bilbo, you step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. But change is not always bad, and it is never hopeless. So make a plan and keep going. Okay, that's my tip for this month. I hope it helps you make that backup plan so you have a clear path to success. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about today's tip or marketing in general. You can email me at info@fictionatlas.com with your questions, or check me out on my websites listed below. I hope you have a lovely month, and I will see you next time. Bye.
All right. Yes. So CL Can talked us off the ledge there. So we appreciate it. Nita says, poor thunderclap. And then Vanessa chimed in with, I don't even know what it was. And it was a crowdfunding social media thingy. Woo. All right.
Yeah. And it was familiar, but I still can't place what it actually was. And that's fine because it's gone, so it doesn't matter.
Yes, I mean, it happens. It's part of the nature of doing business, right? And it's what
Yep.
it is. So, speaking of doing business, we've come across a survey that was published earlier in, I think, last week. But every year, that written word media asked indie authors about their experiences with writing, publishing, and marketing. And this year's survey had over 1,500 respondents. And we're going to go over some of the results and talk a bit about everything that we've kind of experienced. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the motivation of authors. And I have that here. So motivation for publishing, what drives indie authors, the results when asked about their primary motivation. These are the ranges of responses that the authors offered. 42.7% of respondents said, I want to make money from my book, highlighting a strong financial drive. 19.3% indicated, I want my story to be told, showing a significant portion of authors who are motivated by sharing their personal and creative narratives. 16.7% stated, writing is a hobby I enjoy. 14.7% said, I want to become a well-known author. And 6.8% said, other. which I'm always fascinated by what other might mean. But
Right.
but
I will
I
say, I
mean,
think it's interesting that so many said they want to make money from their books, because there was a time not long ago where that was not necessarily something. While it may have been true, it wasn't something that people often voiced, because this whole idea that artists should do it for the art, you
mhm.
know, and it's like, no, I got to pay my mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a reality that comes with
Mhm.
that strife, right? And trying to figure that out. And a lot of what this survey doesn't jive with a lot of how I know authors to become full-time authors. And it actually kind of shits on one aspect of it that I think is kind of important, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I really, what was fascinating to me about this was the 16% that say they're doing it as a hobby. I don't come across many people who do it as a hobby anymore. It's kind of interesting to me.
I think also that's kind of a nebulous thing, because I think there are some authors who feel like if they have a full-time job and they're writing on the side, it's a hobby,
Yeah,
not, you know what I mean? I
they're
don't know that
realistic
that
about
is.
it.
Yeah, I don't know that that is necessarily like they don't wanna make money or they don't wanna become a full-time author, just that it's unless the survey, which it probably didn't, unless it actually defined what hobby means,
Mhm.
but because it wasn't in the results, then I'm guessing that they didn't do that. So that could have been anything, you know?
Could have been the other category that we've been talking about. Who
Yeah.
knows? But so
So
now, so how are people doing in making money in their goal? So if you see here, the top left hand corner on my screen, I'm sure it's the top right for everybody else. Uh, is how much do authors earn selling books per month? And the majority, 46%, said it was $100 or less. And then the second highest majority on there was 250 to 1,000. So, uh, you know, um, authors in the 251 to 1,000 range made up 17% of the respondents, while higher income brackets from 2,500 to over 20,000 account for also 17%. Uh,
mhm. And I think this is much different than it has been in the past, though.
of course, yeah,
That 251 to 1,000 being so much higher
yeah.
than everything except for the lowest amount, that's different than in past surveys.
And again, they have this weird category of no income listed, and I'm going, well, why are you taking a survey if it's anonymous? You don't want to get
Well, but
what you're making.
yeah, right, why would you take that survey? But, I like that they at least gave that option, but you can probably guess that probably the majority of them probably fall into that first category,
Yeah, yeah,
of
and
$100 or less.
yeah, for sure. And then so
Yeah.
the question is, how many books do you need to write? The average number of books published by authors in 2024 survey is 8 books, but this number varies widely depending on how long an author has been writing and their income bracket. So, I mean, this leads the survey folks to conclude that the more books you have, the better your backlist and the more you can do with it, i.e., box sets, bundles, omnibuses, etc. Backlist for me this year has been the huge buzzword of 2024, in my personal opinion. That's my personal opinion. That is not the personal opinion of the survey, but it's been the big word I've heard over and over again this year, and most subscribe to this ideal. But I also think, again, this is me talking about this. I think it's an outside realm of possibility that there's something to be said for that in itself is shiny and new, and that's why it's being successful. If you're putting out an
Do you
omnibus
mean
for the first time,
Yeah, but none of that, like an omnibus and stuff, those aren't your backlist. Your backlist are
I
your
understand,
past titles.
but it
They're not
gives you
counted. Those are special editions. But yes, that has increased absolutely in the last 5 years at least.
and yeah, special book covers and special designs and
Mhm.
collector's
Yeah,
editions.
yeah.
And they mentioned the collector's editions in here. Um,
In a later one, yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I
we'll
wanna
get to.
oh, can we look at the books published one real quick? I thought
Oh
there was
yeah.
something super interesting. Yes, of course, they made the conclusion that the more books you have, the more money you make. Yes, duh, we know that already. But the really interesting piece is this one that is $251 to $1,000 again, because look at theirs. Look at that. That is what, 15 books.
Hmm.
Whereas the 101 to 250, the average is 40.
Yeah.
So the ones who are in the 251 to $1,000 bracket are doing something significantly different than the 100 to 250. And so I think, and this is based on nothing but my my understanding of human beings and what I know of other indie authors, but there's a certain mindset where you focus and you do all those things you're supposed to do with a business. You make a good marketing plan, you test things, you iterate, you do all those things. And I would guess that the people who are in the 251 to $1,000 range are the ones who are doing that. And the
Hmm.
ones lower than that are, you know, not to say that they're not doing smart things, but just to say that maybe they don't grasp that kind of entrepreneurial mindset where
Hmm.
you streamline, you focus, you figure out if it works, and if it doesn't, you pivot. And you know what I mean? They're still getting their footing. So I thought out of all of the numbers that they threw around on this particular chart and the conclusions they came to, those were boring conclusions that we already know. But I
Hmm.
thought it was really interesting that there's something that the people who are making 250 to $1,000 a month are doing significantly differently, because they need only a third of the books that the 101 to 250 bracket
Yeah.
do. So I thought
And,
that was just a really interesting little piece.
no, absolutely. And I also believe that the hobby number comes into play here and skews the 100 to 250 a month
That's
income.
that's a good guess. Yeah, that's not unlikely. I would agree with you on that.
Because if you're doing it for a hobby, I mean, it says you need about 40 books, but you know, I mean, do you just keep cranking out books because you're just doing it when
Mhm.
you want to? You know.
And there's also book length too. So,
Yeah.
and that may also contribute a little bit to this,
Hmm.
because I know that there are a lot of there are a lot of indie authors who write short.
Hmm.
Like they might put out a book they might put out a book that's 10,000 words every single week, right? So, which is of course going to bump up their total number of books published, but not necessarily their total words, right? Their 40 books may equate to the 15 books that the 250 to $1,000 bracket do. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Absolutely. Lily, who we'll have a quote from in a little
Yes.
bit, mentioned this, and I think this is really good. Backlists are important. If you have a robust enough backlist, it can assist you in sales and people interested in your work when you release a new book. But you still need to market the books, new or backlist. You can't rely on only new releases or hope that new people find the backlist. Marketing is the key. It's likely why the brackets need less. That bracket needs less books. They're marketing them well in niche genres. Sorry,
Yes.
I'll be quiet. No,
No,
don't
I
ever be
agree with you
quiet.
100%, Lily. 100%. And that's exactly what I mean. That the people who are in that 251 to $1,000, and Anita makes a good point. The price might affect this too,
Yeah,
but I also
we'll get to that
like
too.
Lily was saying. I feel like they're probably the ones who like they've figured their stuff out,
Yeah,
at least whatever the current thing is.
yeah,
Everything changes every 3 months, so it'll be different in 3 months. But for right now, they've really kind of found their niche, or they found their way of marketing that's effective for them, and they're going to be growing into like the later columns.
and
So
and like not defining other and who's not interested category or no income listed category. they're also not defining what book means, because these could also
Yeah.
have novella implications. They could even have Vella
Yeah.
implications. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, and those count each of those. I don't know if I would count each of those episodes as a book, but I mean,
No,
who knows?
I think most people would count the project as the book.
I
That
would think
I
so.
think.
I would
I
think.
would think. So,
But
all
that
right.
would
Anyway.
contribute as well. And then of course, um, this number is the bottom one's very interesting to me for one purposeful idea, and that is direct sales wasn't even a category the last 2 years on this survey. This is the first time they've
Yeah.
ever had direct sales on this survey. And you can see where Amazon is slowly losing, because if you look at last year's survey, they were at 91. They're at
Yep.
87, I believe, this time around.
Yep.
If my notes are, if I have my notes here, I think I do, where they were.
Yeah. Looks like
Yeah,
about 87.
yeah, and the majority, they're saying here that ebooks remain the top format. We'll get to that in a second too, but yeah, this is I found that interesting. Direct sales is the second placer in this idea as well, which is very.
Mhm. And the other thing I read in their roundup that I don't think that you covered in the notes I'm seeing, is that even though it said something like 27% or 17%, some like under 20% actually have direct sales on their website, but 42 or something percent, something in the low 40s,
Mhm.
of respondents said that they plan to
I
add direct
actually,
sales to
I
their
actually,
websites.
yeah, I actually do have that number. It's down at the bottom when in the marketing
Oh,
aspect when we get to the marketing stuff. But
gotcha.
yeah, no, but that is right. And um, so now then the question becomes, where are they selling? I mean, this
Mhm.
genre thing is no fucking surprise whatsoever. I mean, there's
No.
just, I mean,
Although the increase in fantasy is
yeah,
interesting because fantasy always kind of was on par with everything else, with romance, of course,
mhm.
giving the big middle finger. It's literally looks like a middle finger.
It really does.
Um, you know, but fantasy is higher than I was expecting,
Oh
which
god,
is awesome for
I
me.
never even thought of that. That's fucking great.
I know, right? It's like it looks like if you just stop it, like if you just take mystery, nonfiction, romance, science fiction, and thriller, it totally looks like, well, I guess you just need nonfiction. I guess you don't need to have mystery in there. It looks like romance is given the middle finger. There are people like me that are doing direct sales through places like BookFunnel and Story Origin, and they
Yeah,
actually talk about that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there was another category in that aspect of that graph as well. So, and that was probably what falls under the other category. Again, formats not a big surprise, although this is the first year that they've had the collector's edition on the survey, so you can see
Good.
how that is, doing. They just
Yeah.
included those in hardback the last time they did a survey. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I'm
um,
glad and collector's editions are becoming big. Like
yeah.
those are big things. Like the editions that have cool designs on the edges of the
Mhm.
pages, stuff that has really interesting um illustrations and stuff maybe on the first book of each chapter. They're really cool.
Mhm.
So,
And the
oh, that's Lily makes a good point. That other section likely is what includes signings and in-person sales for paperbacks and special edition physicals. But the lack of information in this whole study astounds me. Yeah, I wouldn't really call it a study. It really was just a survey. And also, it's going to be because written word that's the uh, yeah, you can thank Kickstarter for the ride. I don't
and
know, I
Brandon
think that they were
Sanderson too.
already coming up even before Kickstarter. Like, I was
Eh,
talking about it about 4 years ago that,
yeah.
like, I saw we're not ever gonna get rid of paperbacks, but what we're gonna start seeing is collector's editions and things like that. Um, but going back to the study itself, written word runs a number of marketing places for authors. So I would expect that the majority of their respondents are people on their mailing lists and stuff. Like that's where they initially sent it out. It went out on social media and lots of other places too,
Right.
but it's definitely not a study
No.
so much as it's really just a survey.
And
So,
they eliminated a category this year. Last year they had trade paperbacks on their list. They've eliminated
oh yeah, we
on.
don't even do those really as indie
Yeah.
authors.
Yeah. Which I think we commented last year when we went over
Mhm.
this about how stupid that was that they had that on there. So
Yeah.
maybe they were listening. I don't know. But something about this is they said that the majority of authors are fulfilling their print orders on print demand. KDP is overwhelming the favorite for print on demand. However, Ingram Spark is the second most used platform, especially those aiming to reach brick and mortar stores and libraries. Draft to digital is a less common POD, but it's used for authors looking for additional distribution flexibility. So that's kind of an interesting
Yeah,
aspect.
and considering Draft to Digital only started doing print, what, a year and a half ago?
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago? So
Yeah, gotta give Coker and the boys some credit there. I mean, they're
yeah.
making a dent, and that's what they wanted to do. And they, Mark has always been one of those guys that slow and steady wins the race. So I think
I mean,
he's proving to be right, and
mhm.
his statement, which we'll read a little bit later, is kind of geared toward that idea. But
Slow and steady.
Okay, so let's get into the aspects that we really want to talk about. The meat that I know Vanessa's really. So let's start though with the cover design aspect of these things,
Mhm.
because this was very disturbing to me. I did not like this at all. This was the part that really made me kind of throw up a little bit in my mouth, to be honest with you. Cover design
Were you
spending.
surprised?
I was a little bit, actually, because I believe.
Okay, let's
I
hear
think.
it.
I think recently, especially for those who are trying to make money at this, I think that idea, it starts and begins and ends with the cover. If that's your push to make money, and so to think about, you know, cover design as an afterthought should never ever be the case in that respect. I
Yeah.
mean, so
Well,
you can see here.
I think that these numbers seem pretty normal to me. Like the lower earning authors
Mhm.
spent little on covers, the mid-range authors spent mid-range on covers, and the high earning authors spent higher on covers. I mean, to me, this makes sense. Like it makes sense to me.
Mm. I mean, okay, so it might be sensible, but I just feel like it's the thing we harp on the most, right? We got to
Mhm.
get it. We've got to get out of this mentality that the cover design can be special only to those who are traditionally published. It's been a bugaboo for indie authors
Do you
for a
think
very
that
long
that's what it
time.
is though? Like I think it's more
They can't
the
afford
authors
it.
who are not I think it's an affordability thing. I really do. I don't. I think it's two things. I think it's like some people literally do not have the money.
Mhm.
They just don't, and so they're doing the best they can with what skills they've got and the tools that they have. And that's, I mean, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money, right?
Yeah.
But there's also the authors who are just cheap and they
Mhm.
just don't want. Like most of the people I know who do their own covers, they fall into two categories. Well, three if you count the one, but I don't know very many that just don't care. One is they literally don't have the money and they know they don't have the best skills, but they're trying. But then there's another set that actually thinks they have the skills, but they don't.
Mhm.
And they're often and they also don't have the money though. So, but they're often I find super excited about what they make because it's really good for their skill level, right?
Yeah.
And but you look at it and it's like, yeah, don't go with that, right? And you try to be kind. And I am not in any way making fun of people because I have very little visual media
Mhm.
design skills at all, right? I can manipulate photos and I can make stuff, but I would never try to make my own cover because I just do not have that skill set. But
Yeah.
I'm also privileged in that I do have the money to pay for covers, right? So I'm not banging on people or anything like that, but definitely if you're excited about it, but people tell you that maybe you should see about getting a professional cover, maybe you should see about getting a professional cover. And the thing is, there's so many pre-mades that you can get for like
Yeah.
under $150.
Yeah.
And that's still a lot of money, but
Yeah.
you can absolutely save like $10 out of every paycheck, to go for your covers. So, yeah, so the numbers for this didn't surprise me all that much.
The reason it surprised me is I'm seeing so many gorgeous covers being bandied about, and asking them about how they got their cover, and it's becoming a who do you know kind of thing, and can that person work with you to get you to where you need to be and make it affordable for you. There is options out there. This reeks a little bit of laziness to me, but it also reeks a lot of inexperience, which Anita mentioned, and
Yeah.
also a little bit of an arrogance, because I do think what you say is very true in that some people think that they made a gorgeous cover, or they found a gorgeous cover, and it's really dog shit, you know?
In my experience, that isn't arrogance so much as it's enthusiasm. Like
Okay,
enthusiasm
fair
with
enough.
some ignorance,
Mhm.
and like I'm sure that there are people for whom it is arrogance, but the ones I've seen have been people who are very early in their writerly journey.
Yeah,
And you know me, like I'm kind of ensconced in the author community. And so it's a lot of new authors who are super excited and you know they've done this thing which with tools that they're not used to using and skills that they don't really have,
mhm,
but like what they did is great, you
mhm.
know for a desktop background. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Or for like um a motivation cover, right? Slap a cover on it
fair
so that you're motivated to finish writing it. It's
fair enough.
awesome for that. It's
Yeah,
not as awesome for being on Amazon
right.
because, the professionalism is key.
Yeah. And Lily says they're assuming authors pay out royalties. It feels like that's what bothers me. I know people who earn very little, who buy custom covers. That doesn't mean they get.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely
So
true.
let's get to the one that you really want to talk about.
But again, this was nothing surprising at
Nothing
all.
surprising,
Although I
nothing
really,
is
really hate that
disturbing.
first one.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
a
No, I mean, it's
disturbing
disturbing. I'm not saying it wasn't disturbing, but it
fact.
wasn't surprising.
It is very disturbing, in my personal opinion. Uh, and you know what they put here, as they listed it, is that people who clicked that in their survey were dependent on beta readers. And how many times have we harped on beta reading is not editing? And
Yes.
that
Yes.
that I wanted to bring up. And then now
Lily,
I'm gonna sit back.
same.
I'm just gonna sit back and let
Lily.
you and Lily
Yeah.
have a conversation right here, right
Same.
So,
So much.
so tell me, Vanessa, what do you think about this? I mean,
So in reading there, so like again, not surprising. But let me tell you, the idea that an author would literally pay nothing for editing and expect I mean, I can guarantee you the majority of those are gonna be in that
mm,
$100 or less a month.
mhm,
Like the idea that you want to be a professional author, but you're not willing to invest. It's the same with the cover, but you're not willing to invest in some kind of editing,
mhm,
right? Like some kind of editing, and as I'm sure Lily can attest, most of these numbers are like way you should be paying more than most of this
yeah,
if you're working with an actual professional
yeah,
editor, you're paying more. Yeah, Anita, they can argue that, but everybody's entitled to their opinion and just sometimes their opinion is wrong. So, yeah, one of the things that people might find interesting, but I didn't find surprising, is that those authors who were making a lot more money, like you know, $40,000, $50,000 or whatever, they often did not pay much more than those who are in the kind of lower ranges of,
Yeah.
$2,000 a month or whatever that they're bringing in.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like I think those numbers, the 500 to 1,200 is probably going to be closer to your range of professional editors. But the
Yeah.
thing is, you especially need editors when you're first starting out, which is difficult because that's when you have the least money, right? But you need an editor at least for your first 5 books, at a pro editor, because you're learning from them. That is what their job is. Their job, it's like a tutor. They're like tutoring you in how to write. And you should learn more each time you are edited. Your editor should have less to do for every book that you give them.
Mhm.
And then the authors who make a lot more money and have a huge backlist or whatever, they need less editing because theoretically they've worked with a professional editor for all of their books. So when they're on book 60 or 100, they're not going to need nearly as much editing. And Lily says, I deliberately undercharge. What's being paid here is far under what value actual editors have. I think people pay for proofreading and think it's editing. That's probably true. Yeah, and I'd agree with you. I feel like I did my job when repeat clients came to me and each book takes less work. And that's what I tell them on the front end. Like I tell them, and those are the type of authors that I want to work with. I want you to be a good student because I want to work less. And the plus side of me having less work to do on your manuscript, it also means you pay less, right?
Yeah.
Because it's much cleaner.
Mhm.
That's like, it's my job, it's my ideal to make them so good that I just have to kind of read through and be like, okay, just this needs to be fixed, or this doesn't make sense, let's revise here, to where like there's one comment per page. That is not how my usual editing is. There's many comments per page. But yes,
Okay.
and I do not undercharge because I don't.
Can I play devil's
So I am
advocate?
actually, I'm sorry?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Say finish what
No,
you
go
were
ahead. No, that was that. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate for 1 second, and I'm wondering,
Mhm.
even though it says, well, first off, the question is worded for professional editing, so I'm wondering if people just have like their mom edit this. That might be one of those things, right? And my mom would charge $50. That's my mom. But,
Or your high school English teacher,
right.
or the English major at the local community college or whatever.
Now
Yeah.
the other thing that comes up quite a lot in what I do and how I do it is what is indie, right? How do I define
Mhm.
indie? People ask me that a lot. And I say if you're under a small press, you're technically indie because you're doing a lot more of the work, the legwork than you are not. And so I'm wondering if that might skew this nothing number and say, well, I have a small press publisher. I don't pay for the editing with a small press publisher. That's part of the contract that I have. And I'm wondering if that skews this number a little bit too, you know,
I
just
don't
maybe a
know.
little.
I don't consider, honestly, even though I don't consider being published with a publisher that is a traditional style publisher, meaning they take submissions, they acquire things. They don't just publish whoever submits. They actually have a submission process. They have
Right.
an editorial process, a proofing process. Like I don't consider it, they're just small presses. I don't consider them indie. Like, and I've never understood why they're called indie presses, because every press, unless it's an imprint, is indie. Like you're just a press.
Yeah.
You're not indie. Like you're all indie. It doesn't make any sense to me, really.
But can you
But
can
I
you
think the
see
way
that some people would have a different definition of that?
Sure, and what I was just gonna say is that I think some people feel like if they utilize print on demand, that makes them indie, whether they're a publisher or an author.
Mhm.
And I don't agree with that, because that's about the printing. That's
Yep.
not about the publishing,
Yep.
and it's fine. Like, I'm not going to like fight anybody about it. It's not that big a deal. But as long as, like, when someone says indie, like I ask them, or they ask me, what do you mean by that? Or I'll preface, when I talk about an indie author, I'm talking about someone who self-publishes,
Mhm.
not someone who publishes with I mean, obviously you can do both. You can self-publish and publish with a press. And ideally that's what you do.
Yeah.
But that's how I define it, because a press is a press. Now,
Right.
there are some companies that call themselves presses, but really what they are um, they're not publishing houses so much as they are assistants for authors. Like, they
Mhm.
have editorial
Mhm.
stuff, and they're not really a vanity publisher,
Mhm.
but they help you do the things.
Mhm.
And they're kind of a gray area to me, because I don't really consider them a press. So
Yeah.
anyway, but we're learning all this, right? We're
Yeah.
all fumbling around learning.
I'm just curious, because that's a really high number, even for that aspect of what would be nothing. But again, doesn't surprise me if that's just people saying, "Yeah, I don't edit," or "I just have my beta readers edit," kind of thing. So
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me. All right, so we're getting into this part where everybody hates the marketing, and this is also another bone of contention with me with this survey, because you and I both know a lot of people who run the circuits, who go to probably 20 to 30 events a year and sell their
Mhm.
asses off. And that's their major. They actually do not like online. They rather do it in person. And they do well enough.
Mhm.
I know one in particular I could name right
Yeah.
off the top of my head that became a full-time author based upon in-person
Yep.
events, you know?
Yep.
And
I think, though, what the reason, so I'm assuming you're talking about this first number, the
Mhm,
23.6%. And the reason, and read how it translates, they rarely translate into substantial sales. Well, of course not.
mhm,
When you're selling at an event, you're limited, number one, by the number of people there, number two, by the number of people who actually come by your table, and number three, but the amount of effort that you put into it, right?
right,
So those are all single sales. But I but I think what this tells me is that there are a lot of indie authors leaving money on the table, because they are
yeah,
not doing in-person events, because they feel like it's not going to translate to large investment or large sale, a substantial amount of sales. But what they don't understand is that the people that you are meeting at conventions, at um, vending events, especially if it's something that's recurring, if it's
mhm,
something that happens annually, or maybe, you vend with a particular group of vendors, and at least effective could mean they suck in person too. That's true. But maybe you're vending with a vending group that goes to, different places, but like they're in the same place maybe 3, 4 times a year. You see these people again, and then they're the ones you are much more likely to get a super fan from somebody who you've met and sold to in person than someone who bought your book off of Amazon.
true.
So I think that what this tells me is that there's a significant number of indie authors um, who are leaving money on the table, basically.
Holy
Lily said, I went to one signing and earned my table fee back in under an hour and saw ebook sales rise. In person events are amazing if you can either mask your shyness or outgoing naturally. The connections you make are invaluable. 100%. As a matter of fact, I'm in the middle of organizing. There's a group of us from the Writers Troupe who annually we sell at the Atlanta Comic
Mhm,
Convention, which is huge. But the table, like the booths, are really expensive. But we vend together. We get a big booth and we vend together. And what we found is this year our sales were big, like high. Other authors who were like in Artist Alley and stuff were not. Like, some of them didn't even make their table fee back. We all made bank.
mhm,
And I think it's because a lot of the people who came remembered our booth from last year because we were a big booth. We had, half a dozen, 8 authors, and they came looking for us. And so I think this year it's going to be similar. So, anyway, so so that's what that number tells me.
We in social media thing, we don't have to go over that. That's old news. That's everybody hates it. So whatever. I really appreciated the underrated marketing tag. I think this is actually the best part of this entire survey. These little things
agreed.
here were very, 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 very well thought out and put together, and I really enjoyed that. And you could read it on your own, but it's reader magnets, back matter links, multi-author promotions. I mean, this is thinking outside the box. That's basically what this is. And if you do that, you're going to be successful. Not everything works, but
I think it's funny that you say it's thinking outside the box, because these are actually the things that successful indie authors have been talking about for ages. These are the things that are like, when you're first learning how to market, these are the things that you're told. I literally explained half of this stuff to an author last week.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Here's the marketing tactics effectiveness. Newsletter pumped up from last year, and I think that the thing underneath it is part of the reason why newsletter swaps, even though that's misspelled.
Typos,
When
man.
I'm finding editing mistakes, you got a bad survey. But but yeah, this part is the only part that looks like a human wrote it without even modicum of interest in others' well-being in this industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, and this is all pretty similar. I mean, they gave if you go through the survey, they gave ratings each person who put this marketing tactic up. They rated it, and none of them rated high. None of them did. They were all in the 2s or 3s. BookBub, I believe, was the highest one that got the most love, but BookBub is also the most difficult one to get into.
The deals, for sure, absolutely, and that's also part of why. But it's one interesting thing. The Kickstarter, I would be interested to see what that was from last year, because I'm betting it's going down, because I'm hearing lots of things from different people who have been in the Kickstarter arena for quite a long time, talking about how overall Kickstarters are not doing as well.
And I can tell you, Amazon ads went down tremendously on this survey from a year ago.
Interesting.
Amazon ads was the number 1 on this survey last year. So,
well, they've been messing with the algorithm. They mess with how it works, and now it's harder for authors to get success. Because they change it, and when they change it, every time they change it, you have to completely change how you're doing things, and it's just exhausting trying to keep up with all this BS.
So should we hear what the experts in our industry think about
Let's do
all of this wonderful stuff? We're going to start with Mark Coker, because this is the longest, obviously.
He's a talker like me.
Yeah, and he has a lot to say on this topic. This is his soapbox, everybody. Just so you know, I thought it was a great survey and with some great findings. Correlation between editing and sales, mailing list size and sales, and among others. Also neat to see Smashwords drafted digital mentioned, though I'm not sure why they gave Smashwords the other label. There's some of that. So there's part of the reasoning of the other. Though we were referenced in the text, our store is on track for its 8th consecutive year of sales increase during a time when most major retailers have been flat to down. We're not exactly sure why this is the case, but we suspect one of the several reasons is that we're witnessing the emergence of readers who actually appreciate and seek out indie books, but we really don't know. I hope all is well in your world. He was talking about exciting times for indie authors. I was saying 15 years ago, he was absolutely saying this 15 years ago, that the day would come when more authors would aspire to indie publish rather than trad pub. And I think the day is upon us. Woohoo!
Absolutely. 100%.
I mean, this was tailor made for Mark Coker to bag and boast, and that's what he
But
did.
I also have to say he said a sentence in there kind of encapsulates everything about this industry. We don't really know why. That's like everything. That's like everything. So, welcome, JD. Don't worry, we're still talking. Amazon has been doing offsite ads, which is increasing the spending. Yeah, I'm sure.
But even for Mark Coker, that was a little subdued. I have to give him credit. A little edited there, so I appreciate that. But because if you've ever had a conversation with Mark, he can go off on this topic for hours and hours. And it's fascinating and it's wonderful. He's so passionate. I love all that about him. It's one of the reasons why I love the guy, but it is exhausting. It's a lot of
It can be. It can be. I mean, I recognize that when I start talking about the publishing industry, most of the people in my world that are not writers, they get that glazed over look, and that's the key. It's like, okay, Vanessa, dial it back a little. They don't know, they don't care.
and then
So,
and then,
who
yeah,
else do we have?
Mickey Mickelson, who is the owner of a Creative Edge publishing firm, said this article is dead on in all avenues from marketing standpoint to the results standpoint. So he was very succinct. And then we have Courtney Cannon at CL Cannon, who I got a quote from, and she says, I found the data interesting, especially the corresponding relations between authors with consistent newsletter habits earning more, as well as the fact that authors spending moderately on cover design pays off. Giving readers, so she has a different take on that, which is very interesting. Giving readers a good experience and investing in quality will always be a good choice, and the data supports that. So,
well, I think when she said moderately, I think she meant the people who are not, doing it on Canva, or the people, So I think she was meaning people who are willing to spend some money on their covers.
And there's a lot of
who else do you have?
We've got Lily Lucchese, indie author and owner of the Partners in Crime Book Services. She said her first reaction was actually how the data was from 1,500 authors when there are tens to thousands of us. Yet they make it look like this was the majority's experience with self-publishing. They made self-pub authors look cheap, lazy, and unsuccessful.
Wow.
By extension, that also means they find self-published services providers insignificant. So
I did not get all of that out of there. I do agree that the sample size was entirely too small.
Yeah.
They've got to do better at making a push to get it out to more indie authors. I don't know how they do that aside from making sure they reach out to people who run. I know Dave Chesham posted about it in his socials when the survey was first out, but like they've got to make a concerted effort to pull in other, like as many authors as they can, because 1,500 is not a good enough sample size. And again, like I said earlier, that their first push with the survey is going to be on their mailing list, which is all of the authors, like written word is a service for, like, they do services for authors, primarily marketing, but they have other things too. And so, it's going to get pushed out to their people. So the majority of the people in that 1,500 are probably people who have, I've used their services. I feel like it's really hard to find an author that hasn't used one of their services if they do any kind of online marketing. So Lily says, I had feelings on this. Yes, you did, girl. You have your feelings. They know their market. They knew who they were asking and what the results would be likely to be by sending it to their user subscribers first. Yeah. But also, there's not really a lot in there that I don't think is true to at least some extent, because there are a lot of authors who are doing this, who are kind of flailing around, and I'm still flailing around sometimes, so that I'm including myself in that, who maybe aren't doing as focused and like good a job on the business side as they could be, and then there's people who are there are way more newbie authors than there are anybody else. Let's just be clear about that, because like every day somebody's like, oh, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to
Yep.
publish it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And, so to varying degrees of seriousness, right? So like what I actually got out of that was kind of not exactly the opposite of what you did, Lily, but I got out of it that there are indie authors who are making a success of this. That's what I got out of it. Yes, there are a whole bunch that are just, putzing around or just doing their thing or whatever. But I think it's a marathon. Amen. And dude, I am so tired. But
Stop
I
making me
do
run
like
marathons, for fuck's sake.
I
I'm gonna go
know.
for it.
Have you seen my knees? Um, so I didn't get the same thing out of it, which I think is really interesting. I got out that yes, there are people who are not successful, but there are more successful people than the world at large realizes. I
I
think
will.
that's what I got out of it,
I will
generally
say
speaking.
there's a lot of, I won't say there's red flags, but there is a few yellow flags for me in this thing. So I had a lot of what Lily had there a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by any of it. I am. I just am surprised by the angle in which we started this conversation. You know, uh, the angle was that people wanted to make money. That was the angle that this
Mhm.
survey started with. And the way you do that is to present yourself in a professional manner. No matter what you spend, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about putting the best product and your best foot forward. And that includes marketing, includes editing, includes covers, includes all these
Mhm.
things. And if you're trying to skimp the system will not reward you for that skimping. You have to
Yeah.
put in the effort. If you think covers cost $1,000, if you think your best cover is going to cost you $1,000, take the time to save for that $1,000. Save that money so that you can put that out there the way you want to put it out there. Because what's going to happen is if you put it out there, you're going to take it down. Something's going to happen immediately. You're going to regret the choice of putting it up there, and then you're going to have to bring it back and then go for that $1,000 cover later down the road. How many times do people rebrand themselves? 1,000 times over, right?
Mhm.
So that has to happen. So I think the one thing I will say to young authors or new authors is look at what success means to you, define that, and
Yes.
then go for that. Don't skimp, don't try to shortcut. Shortcuts come when you learn the business. That's how shortcuts come. That's when you become successful at shortcuts is when you have 30 books out there. When you figured some things out, then you can shortcut it. Don't look for those because there's no overnight success in this business. There's just not. It doesn't happen. Um,
Mhm.
no matter what anybody tells you, J.K. Rowling was writing for millions of years before and hating on gay people 1,000 times for years before she wrote Harry Potter.
Quietly, more quietly.
Right, a little bit quietly because nobody knew who she was, so nobody cared. But you know, that is just if you want to go for it, go for it. But go for it with your best foot forward. Do it the
Yeah.
right way, right up the bat. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from those mistakes, and some things aren't going to go the way you thought they were going to go. That happens. That's part of this journey as well. But if you go with the best intention right off the bat, there's no way you can't succeed and find your
Mhm.
goals. And part of that leads us into if you are a new author, if you're an old author, if you're an author that was so mad at NaNoWriMo and just was like, I'm done with this garbage, we have the answer for you tonight. Do we not, Vanessa?
We do. So, in the Writers Troop, which is a writerly support and education network that I run on Facebook, Discord, and Twitch, we have decided we are doing Wham, which is writing hard all month. And so, if you do not want to embrace the nano label, feel free to use Wham. So so we're doing the extra sprints and we're doing extra, co-working and all kinds of stuff. Yes, Joe is actually leading some sprints, which I'm so excited. And it's super cool because he's doing meditation too, which is amazing without Viagra. Dude.
You won't need it after this month.
Yes. So, and the cool thing is because we're doing it very freeform, we're using TrackBear, which several people had suggested to me over the last few weeks. TrackBear app, I think is what it's called. And you can set your goal to be by word, by page, by scene, by chapter. Like you can pretty much pick any kind of granular configuration, and you can do multiple things. You can track by words and pages. So like
And
I'm doing
projects.
revisions. So I generally in the past have always tracked my revisions or tracked by page because you can't really, you may take out 100 words and add 500, or the other way around. So tracking words just seems ineffective as a tracking technique.
Yeah.
But then I can also I can make that I want to track words and I want to track pages. So I can do both. So yeah. So very excited to be doing this. Gonna try to
Go
get some
check it
stuff
out.
done. I myself am working on a short story collection because I've given up on my novels for now because none of them seem to want to talk to me. So I've been going through all my flash fiction, microfiction, short stories and stuff, and so I'm doing revisions and I'm going to collect them all in one book.
I will be
So
working. I will be working on my horror novel that I've promised a certain somebody in our group that I will have
yes.
by the end of the year. Something at least to be read. So I will be working on that for the entirety of November and into December, and trying to get that done. So go check it out. And I want to take this opportunity because we haven't had the opportunity to do so before now to congratulate our own Vanessa Junta, who, if you hadn't heard the news, you are looking now at the Writers Track, the program director for Writers Track at DragonCon.
Just director. Programming director is a different thing. I am now the
director of the Writers Track at DragonCon.
At DragonCon. Yes, thank you.
So,
yes, I was very excited. I was basically the assistant director. At DragonCon, they call it second to the director, which I don't know why, but I was basically that for about a decade, a little over a decade, 12 years, I think. So now I get to do it. We're gonna miss Nancy, although she'll still be around DragonCon. For those who have been there, she will still be around, and I think I'm gonna try to continue her. She does a thing, write a story in an hour, and so I think I'm going to continue that with that. So, no, it was not an Office reference. I have never watched The Office, although I do love the memes and the gifs. I like the gifs. So, yes. So, thank you so much for the congratulations. I'm excited.
Absolutely.
Oh.
There we go. I was on the wrong thing, so that's why I was trying to fix it so that we could do the proper outro for this time. If you missed it earlier, I did the wrong intro, but that's okay. But, anyway, yeah. So that's our show for this month. We've got a great show headed for you for next month because we've got stories that we didn't get to because of this damn survey.
But we'll have something crop up the week of the show, and we'll probably end up shoving that off the schedule.
So we're going to see you the first week of December, first Friday of December, everybody, for Late Night News. And Vanessa, why?
Because it's always time to go indie now.